for the war with the U.S. It ended like in 1975, and I was born like in the 1990s. So like even the war is not that big part of the identity for us anymore. Um, so and we are much more developed now compared to back then.
Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I am your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen. Hi everybody, welcome to Coffee and Geography, and believe it or not, the person I'm speaking to now is an ex-work colleague of mine, and she's the only work colleague of mine who's seen the inside of my house, albeit only virtually. But it is absolute pleasure to see you, Lynn. Linh Ho, my ex-colleague from the World Energy and Meteorology Council. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, and it's been wonderful to see, because the last time I actually physically saw you, was it actually at the conference in Denmark?
Yeah, I think it's on in 2019.
2019.
Yes, in
Oh,
Copenhagen.
because I remember the last yeah, because that's it, because you only turned up for one day because you were busy. You
Yeah.
could only make one day, wasn't it? And I remember like seeing you, and I ran over you and gave you the biggest hug. You're like, "What, kid?"
Oh, yeah, I still remember that.
Oh, yeah, but it's absolutely great. So to introduce you to everybody, so Lynn is a thinker, joker, and dreamer. She can be nerdy or artistic, serious or chill, spontaneous or well planned. Lynn loves enjoying nature and spending days solving problems on her computer. And she is currently a PhD student specializing in energy meteorology. And of course, that's how we came to know each other, because when we worked for WEMC, as we called it for short, it was all about combining meteorology and energy, all that kind of stuff. And we may talk about that. So, yeah, how's your PhD going? You told me that you've got, is it a year left or?
Yeah, this is like my final year in my
Wow.
contract. So yeah, a lot of things going on, and I'm trying to finish my first paper. And yeah, it's been like uh, up and down, like tough time, but also I also enjoy very much like exploring the topic that I want to
Mm,
learn about. And energy meteorology is like combination between like just meteorology, but also the application
yeah.
for the energy sector. So for me, it's a interesting topic, and also it's fairly new. So a lot of things to work on.
Yeah. And when I started working for WEMC, and I met you through WEMC, I mean, obviously through someone with a meteorological logical background myself. Of course, I knew that there was links to energy, with wind and solar and all that kind of stuff. But I never knew how deep and intricate the connections were. And the other thing I didn't know was how much there was a need for a non-profit like WEMC to make the connections between energy and climate scientists, because those connections weren't strong to start with. And that's why we've got what we've got. As you say, it's a growing industry now, the whole energy meteorology thing, and you're part of that process. And I'm really pleased that things are going well for you, and you fully deserve. And I can't wait to hear that you've become Dr. Linh Ho, because that's going to just sound so freaking amazing. So yeah. So what is remind me, what is the title of your thesis, or can you kind of summarize it for us in a layman's way, because we've just got like lowly geography teachers listening and people like that.
Oh no. I mean, I haven't got like the full title for the thesis yet
Yeah.
because I'm still on the ongoing process. But my first paper is about like using, of course, I'm using like meteorological data,
Hmm.
and reanalysis data for specifically to trying to understand what kind of weather condition, especially large scale weather conditions, so like around the whole Europe
Hmm.
can cause problematic events to the energy sector. And I'm looking at renewable energy sector, just wind and PV or photovoltaic solar power. And what I'm interested in is trying to look at the low production events. So we know that like trying to increase the share of renewable energy require more knowledge and information from meteorological side. And one of the problematic events is like when both wind and solar power are low,
Hmm.
which can happen when the wind is still and also cloudy conditions. So like you don't have that much of wind energy and solar energy at the same time. And
Yeah.
if it happen at a large scale, so like imagine a lot of countries altogether have low production at the same time, and when we reduce our fossil fuel sources, it will become a much bigger problem
Mm.
because like you can transmit energy somewhere else, and also storage has their own limitation capacity. Um, so I think that's something that like we need to deal with if we want a bigger share of renewable energy. So that's what I'm looking at the moment, using the data from meteorology and trying to model it into wind and solar power,
Yeah.
and then using the past decades to identify which kind of weather pattern can associate it with that low production events. Yeah, and there are only a few papers about that, and yeah, it's also a growing section that and I got a lot of questions about my paper from when I went to the conference. Like now we only have online conference,
Yeah.
but I got quite a lot of questions from the energy sector also, that they're also interested in it because yeah, that happened already, and they are also anticipate more in the future.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's what my first paper is about, and then later on, I hope to develop it further into like how the meteorological condition develop over those events, and that could be a thesis around that topic. I haven't
Right.
got the title yet, but yeah, it would be around that
It's
area.
just this is so fascinating, and I had to learn this kind of stuff, and so thank you so much for kind of like helping me to understand this stuff when we worked together. But I had to learn all this stuff like from a friend. I mean, when I used to teach high school geography, of course, every UK high school geographer would, and anywhere around the world who teach this kind of stuff will recognize the whole. Oh yeah, the limitations of solar power is that you don't get as much energy when the sun's not out and when the wind's not blowing, all this kind of stuff. But that's just so reductive. It's you've got the work that you're doing is to try and counterbalance that, and there's so much kind of data richness and potential for us to kind of manage our power systems to counterbalance this. So for example, if you do have a massive high pressure system with some kind of inversion or an intrusion of, I don't know, Saharan sand or something like that, which then dips the solar level down. But because it's high pressure, there's no wind. Then, okay, what do we do then? What's the backup? Because it's too simple to say, oh, that's okay. High pressure means no wind, but it means clear skies. Well, not all the time, so it's not as simple as that, folks. So that's why the work that Lynn is doing is so important. And the other thing, of course, that you'll recognize this name, Lynn, is that last year for season one I talked to Sebastian Sterl, um, our friend from it was from the Free University of Brussels, who does the renewable energy stuff in West Africa. And we were talking about seasonal forecasting, for example. So if you know so you were saying, if you know the meteorological conditions that will bring about a low power state, then you can forecast that. Then you can manage your grid systems and your power systems a lot more sustainably, and make sure you've got enough battery storage, all this kind of backups, renewable backups, and that kind of stuff. So it is exceptionally important work, and I'm so proud to know someone who's going to be part of that process. It's just,
Oh, I mean, I'm also learning about that.
of
So
course,
part of the PhD is like learning about the topic. So I'm not expert in any sense, but yeah, I also learn a lot from like doing research in this area. Um, and also I realized that the energy sector doesn't have that access into the climate or
mm,
meteorological data that we usually have. Like we have a lot of data and model and projections, but from the energy sector, it's kind of like they are using kind of different data set, and also like
yeah,
sometimes they are not aware of all of the available data. So yeah, that what we did with WMC, that we trying to connect the two sectors together. And yeah, I think that's an important job that then there are a growing community that trying to do that as well.
Yeah. And folks who have got, if you've got students you teach who love this kind of stuff and they love data and they love all this kind of stuff, trust me, there is going to be such a need for that expertise. Like one thing that Lynn and I and the folks who we worked with were trying to battle against is that, one, not everybody uses the same kind of data. There's a lack of what you call standardization, of using different kind of data that won't talk to each other even though they pretty much do the same thing. And the second thing is that quite a few companies, energy companies, whatever, are very protective of their data, aren't they? So there's a lot of intellectual
Very true.
property kind of issues, and they don't want to share it because they think it will give their competitors an edge. So the other job that folks like Wemsey were trying to do, we're trying to convince people it's for the greater good and actually be beneficial to all these companies if they shared their data. So there's all these other things going on as well. And I do remember, it's like, oh yeah, they've like working with the likes of Sue Haupt from NCAR, for example, and Lauren de Boer from well, used to be, is it RTE now, isn't he?
Uh,
I think so.
EDF or
He
yeah.
was at ED. I think he's at RTE now, but trying to get folks to get data to talk to each other, for example. So it's so fascinating. Anyway, we're at risk of going to talk about our old jobs now. So I want to talk about you. But I know that was a fascinating insight for people. So you're in Germany right now,
Yep.
but your home, as you've put on here, is 9,700 kilometers away.
Or
Oh,
12 hours ride.
yeah, because you are from Vietnam.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so but you've traveled so much. I mean, you've traveled so much. You've got a world map in your room where I can see just in the corner, a nice National Geographic map there. Um, and you have this conflict where you're like, you love traveling, you like going to see places, but you also like to kind of immerse yourself in where you are. So being in Germany, so you've lived in the UK, you've lived in Germany. Is there anywhere else you've lived outside of Vietnam?
Oh, yeah, just those two countries. So
Just okay.
yeah, I grew up in Vietnam, did my bachelor there, and then went to the UK for master, and then doing a PhD in Germany. Yeah.
So we have, so us Westerners, we have. I don't think we know countries in Southeast Asia as well as that we should do. We have a very, very, there's a lot of history, of course, between between the Western countries and Southeast Asia. A lot of it is not very pretty history. Most of it's not very pretty history. Um, so I would say that when you've come over here to the UK or to Germany and stuff like that, and you get talking about people about what it's like back home, and what is it? Is there anything that you say or anything that like surprises people of like about Vietnam or where you from, or what is it things that you most like communicate about when you talk about home?
Um, it's not something surprised, but for me, it's kind of like realization that like we actually like in Vietnam we learn more about the Western and the European history,
Hmm.
much more than like European countries learn about our history.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so like I can talk with them about the British history or German history. But then like for people in here, like our story, our history is like quite new to them in a lot of sense, like the war or like the countries.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I think like I'm just trying to talk more about my history or like my country when I can, because I feel like you should also know about that. Sorry, it's a bit,
Yeah,
but yeah, because I think it's interesting to know just different countries, and also how the impact from like Europe can be felt in Vietnam. Um, and also I think they also find that interesting. It's not like they are not interested in it. It's just like uh, our history are not well taught, or like
yeah,
of course it's not like the huge part of the world, so can understand that. But I think it's interesting for them to also to know from like firsthand experience that like somebody come from Vietnam, and like this is where I live, where I grew up.
So what would you say? So you've definitely got plenty of interested people listening. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening. I hope getting to know. So what would you like to say to people listening about Vietnam, which maybe they didn't learn in school?
I mean, like one big part about Vietnam people normally heard about is like Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I know about that war, and oh yeah, like my father or my grandfather was there for the war or something. I heard that quite a lot, but then I have to say that I was born like way after the war. So actually, the war ended like how long? Um, I mean, depends on which war you're talking about. But for example, like for the war with the U.S., it ended like in 1975, and I was born like in the 1990s. So like even the war is not that big part of the identity for us anymore. Um, so and we are much more developed now compared to back then, and also a lot of the thing we already kind of like left behind. So now we have a strong connection and commercial relationship with the US and also with France. Um, so it's not all about war. It's like we have quite a long time with peace now, and like we are developing uh, also all sort of like commercial and also technology and
Mm,
the industry. And I think with like this uh, internet is kind of like fairly easy to access to information, so we are not that far backward. Of course, like we are not like a developed country yet, but I think like if you are still having that image about Vietnam War, like with the picture from the
mm.
textbook or anything, I think people would be fairly surprised when they come to Vietnam now. Yeah, so that's what I usually explain that like it's not all about the war.
Yeah, actually, you've made me remind me something. Is that quite a lot of people know that I'm a big fan of the late Swedish Professor Hans Rosling, who of the Gapminder project, who really did a lot to shift the public, um, you know, understanding with regards to how actually much further the rest of the world has developed, because a lot of us, especially in the West, are stuck with this in our mind frame that we still think the rest of the world is in the 1950s and the 1960s. So we've got this very, very backward view of what the world looks like, and it's a very, very Western colonial kind of way of looking at it, that we're all better than us and everybody's still back in the dark ages or whatever. So that comes to mind. And the other thing as well is that I can't say much on air and in public, but for something I am writing, for a book I'm writing, I did a bit of research about renewable energy in Vietnam, and one thing I was surprised to learn, well, okay, not surprised to learn from a meteorological point of view, but surprised to learn from an energy point of view, is that because the Vietnamese coast, particularly on the south east coast, is quite windy because of
Hmm.
the shift in the winds and the monsoon climate and stuff like that, is that actually there is they're on the cusp of a huge burst of renewable technology, particularly wind, and there's a lot of prospecting about wind energy in
Yeah.
Vietnam, and you've already got quite a good solid solar PV um,
Hmm.
industry as well. So, do you know much about that? What's going on in Vietnam with renewable energy?
Yeah, that's also a surprise to me actually. So when I moved to the UK to study my master's, it wasn't that much developed. It was on paper. It was something that people talking about, but just 1 year and a half later, when I went back to Vietnam, I was so surprised that it went so fast. And
Yeah.
I attended a conference, and all of the technology from Germany, from China, from the US, they have all the big exhibitions, and like people really trying to implement that. And already like even in my hometown there are a lot of PV panels on the rooftop, even like residential area. And I actually went going back to Vietnam for a holiday, but I also will visit a friend who is an engineer for the wind
Wow.
offshore project that you're talking about.
Oh, wow. Okay.
um, yeah, so I'm also excited that he said that he will bring me around to show like how the wind offshore project is going on. And it's really a big project, and also wind offshore is something that like more adjustable compared to PV power.
Yeah.
So a lot of things is going on and with a very fast pace. Um, yeah, and I was surprised as well, but it's actually put Vietnam in quite a large part in the world map of renewable energy.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that I actually studying about this area, that there's something useful when I go back to Vietnam.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I most recently read was I think it was Siemens Gamesa, the energy engineering company who have been contracted to help support develop the largest the largest onshore wind farm anyway in Vietnam, and I imagine that they might be involved in the offshore ones as well. But it's I mean, yes, just I know that just solar and wind alone in Vietnam has huge potential, but then of course you've got the currents that run through past the coast as well, which could potentially useful for tidal as well. It's just so much exciting potential there in Vietnam, and I can definitely see them becoming a leader in Southeast Asia, at least anyway, with all their expertise. And you say you got a friend who's going to be involved in that, like physically. That's pretty cool. I'm very
Yeah,
jealous you get to go on a tour or something.
I'm happy with that. Like in my job at the moment, I haven't got the chance to go on field trip yet, also because of the pandemic, but
Sure.
also mostly I work on the data. So when I got a chance to go to the wind farm, I was like, yay, just let's go.
Yeah, come on, folks, come on. All these folks were doing this amazing work behind, the scenes and on a computer, crunching your numbers, your data. Come on, give them a few trips to some of these
Yes.
places. Let them see where their data's going. Yeah. There you go. Brilliant. Well, I'm so excited now. This is so sad. There was I ran a field trip for an extracurricular geography group when I used to be a teacher, and the idea was we were going to take a boat out to the wind farm just off the coast of Great Yarmouth, which is called Scroby Sands. So we were going to get on this boat in Southwold, and we were going to speed up along the coast and go visit, and then go around this. And we were so excited, and it was like there was me and these bunch of kids. But unfortunately, as you can imagine, because the weather conditions weren't appropriate, we couldn't. We had to call it off. So we just went around the marshes around Southwold. But uh, so I missed out on the opportunity. But I have been up a wind turbine, everybody, and that
Oh,
is
so jealous.
well. This was the it's now closed, unfortunately, because the place didn't do very well. It wasn't. It was very environmentally and socially sustainable, but it wasn't very economically sustainable. So they went under because it was not economically viable. And that is the Green Britain Centre, or the Ecotech Centre, in Swaffham in Norfolk, here in the east of England. And I think it was the only wind turbine in the world that had an enclosed observation deck just underneath the hub of the wind turbine. So you'd go inside, you'd go up a spiral staircase and into this observation deck. And it was a working turbine, so the blades would be going round, everything like it would be wobbling as it should do structurally and all that kind of stuff. But it closed down, and no one's been able to access it now for about 5 or 6 years. It's so sad.
Oh, so that was before I was there, because I would feel um, a big regret that I didn't have the chance
Yeah,
to go there when I
I,
was
th-
in Norfolk.
I think there might be I'm sure there was a second somewhere else in Europe of a similar one where you could go in the observation deck, but the one in Swaffham was the only one open to the public. And
Mm.
I we used to take school groups up there all the time, and it's such a shame that they've shut down. It was such an amazing resource. Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. Let's move on now, because we haven't talked about your drink, Lynn, because
No.
we're having a cup of tea or cup of coffee. What have you got today?
I actually have chocolate, hot chocolate,
Ooh, bit
not
of hot
something
chocolate.
so fancy. Like I drink hot chocolate since I was a child, and I just keep that habit. And I don't really drink coffee or tea that very often. Uh,
Okay.
so like just hot chocolate all the time, like
Is it a
in the
particular
morning.
brand? Is there like a thing that you just grab the nearest thing off the shelf or?
This is like now chocolate Swiss,
Oh
so
yeah.
from Switzerland. But I actually just like grab whatever I think that's okay. So I prefer to have a lot of cocoa in it.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Oh, okay.
but
Just like my
then that's
wife,
about
she like it's got to have a certain minimum cocoa kind of level, otherwise she's not interested. So
yeah. But I guess there were more like hot chocolate in the UK than in Germany for some reason. I couldn't find that many brands in here, so I just stick with the one that I find that's okay.
no, fair enough. I mean, I think we've had one other person drink hot chocolate while they've been on the podcast. So
Isn't it
yeah.
sound a bit? Doesn't it sound a bit childish? But
No, so what is it? So back in Vietnam, what usually is the drink of choice in Vietnam?
um, there's a wide range of choices. A lot of people drink coffee for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and like when you go out, you can drink beer as well. Of course, tea. A lot of people drink it, but like I think like the older generation drink tea like the proper green tea with just tea. But
yeah.
younger people now just drink milk tea, and including me. So I also, if tea, it would be milk tea, like not the milk into tea in the UK, but rather like a sweetened milk tea, like I think from Taiwan. So
Okay.
it's, yeah, it's a young trend, but
Oh,
yeah, just
I'm
a
gonna have
lot
to
of
look that one
different
up.
things that people drink.
Yeah, because I had this picture in my head of like someone like oh they're just brewing some tea, stick some milk in it. But no, there's an actual sweetened kind of, and it's called, is it called milk tea then? Is that its actual name?
It's called milk tea, but yeah, it has like more condensed or evaporated milk,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
mixed with bubble tea. Oh, yes, yeah, also milk bubble tea. Sorry,
Okay.
it's more cold. In the translation is in Vietnamese and milk tea, but like in English, you may call it bubble tea because there's also tapioca in
Ah,
it.
gotcha.
So it's kind of like a snack in the sense that you can chew the tapioca when you drink it,
Okay. Huh.
and it had quite a high calorie in it though. But
It sounds like it.
yeah,
I
but
was going to say
still,
I'll give that a go, but I don't
really.
think I should get hooked on it. I'm trying to keep my weight down. All right, awesome. All right, so Lynn, I'm gonna. I've just realised that when we talk about this, because this is spill the beans now, and what's going to be what's quite hilarious about this is that the thing that you've told me for spill the beans, you literally, well, pretty much spilt the beans because you say that you used to have terrible motion sickness.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and it says you even threw up while on a motorbike. Wait, did you have a helmet on? And
Um, you mean like the trip when I went with my uncle and I just threw up on his shoulder, and
so,
it,
oh,
it's just even a motorbike. Like normally like people have it with cars, or but even on a motorbike, I could throw up. So
so is it was it like terrible motion sickness? Or would you just like dread getting in a vehicle of any kind? I'm gonna be sick, and then you had to like look out a window and all the time. Like, I'm guessing you're someone who just like cannot read on a in a
oh
car or something like
not at all. In the past, I had a very terrible motion sickness. So
that.
basically, I try a lot of different methods. Trying to, like in the Vietnamese methods, like sniff some Mandarin, or like
Okay.
chewing some chewing gum, or like looking out at the window, as you said, or trying to keep my head still, or but nothing works. Like I can have like terrible motion sickness to the point that like I threw up so much that when I get off the car, or like I basically like couldn't remember where I were and I was and um sometime like there was a time that actually the driver had to look for me because I just like sat there and like couldn't get back and like couldn't even remember to get back to the
Oh
car.
no.
So my mother even told me like, how can you like study abroad or like travel with that terrible motion sickness? But
Ah, yeah, that's a
yeah,
good
after
point.
a while, like I learned to adapt to it. Like and now I'm very kind of proud of myself that when the latest time, the recent time that when I went back to Vietnam and I was on the car and it can even like work around and take some stuff for the other people and I felt fine.
Yay.
And like now I kind of like get over with that motion sickness. Not as good as like I can read all the time or I can work on the car, but
Yeah.
still much better than I was before.
That's really made me realize something, to be honest, and that's motion sickness in that sense, and what you just said, in a world where we move all the time, we travel all the time, we have to travel all the time. I imagine that can be so debilitating and really reduce the level of accessibility to people who have like severe motion sickness. Like, as you just said, like your mum said to you, how are you going to be doing the stuff that you want to do? How are you going to be traveling if you have this terrible motion sickness? And did you ever get that sense, like when your mum said that to you, like, actually, I actually quite am worried about, nervous about, I want to go traveling, but I'm worried that I actually physically can't?
Oh, I'm very stubborn in that sense that I knew that like I had that motion sickness, but even when I wanted to travel, I still go for it. Like despite that motion sickness, like I threw up and then like I got on the trip. So
Yeah.
it's like the good thing is I can recover pretty fast after like the motion sickness. Once I get off the car, I can just like stay there for like half an hour and I feel okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think that's also how I could get over it. There was a trip that it was so bad, like I got on the airplane and then the train for 12 hours and then the car
Oh my
and I threw
goodness.
up so much and then at some point it just stopped and then afterward it's like kind of like I think my body just say yeah I have enough, it's
Yeah,
okay
body's like,
now.
you know what? This is just pointless. Let's just stop this. Let's stop torturing poor Lynn. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that helped, if anyone wants to try. Not
Yeah.
recommended, but
Oh, I have stories to tell. Obviously running so many geography school field trips, with with hundreds of kids over the years, there's obviously going to be plenty who get motion sickness, right? And the amount, I mean, the kids who know they get motion sickness, but they will still go on their phones in the coach, or they will still, look at read whatever, they will still do it. There was this one time when I took some kids up to Yorkshire, and they're like, and not only did they get motion sickness, but when we had our pit stop before we got into the Yorkshire Dales, when the roads were quite windy and quite bumpy, this one particular child decided to stuff themselves full of sweets and all that kind of crud, right? So of course, like we almost make it. Like this one kid like says, "Mixed correctly, I'm starting to feel a bit ill," and I was like, "Oh, I knew it." And we'd been on a 6-hour journey by this point, and we were only 15 minutes away from the field center. But we almost made it, and then there was like, "Mixed correctly, such has been sick in the back of the minibus." Oh no. We had to pull over just the minute. Oh, so there's that. And actually, there's one memory that comes to mind as well. Is the I had a wonderful young student, bubbly and bright, always cheerful, called Katie, and Katie got terrible motion sickness. And what she had to deal with it, is she had this armband, this kind of bracelet, um, where it had like a bit of a thicker bit to it, which sat right over the kind of pressure point on her wrist. I said, "Okay, that's really nice." That's because my initial reaction as a teacher, of course, is to say that's not Scott uniform type. But then I was like, "No, hang a minute. There's going to be a reason." It's good. So I went over and she was on a field trip. So I said, "That's really nice. I really like that, Kate. So what are you wearing that for?" Rather, it was like, "Oh yeah, well, I've always got car sick and all this kind of motion sickness. It says it's actually it's called an acupuncture like pressure band or something like that. I was like, oh, and she said whenever I wear this, I never get motion sick. So it's really weird. So yeah, it's kind of like these bands that you can get on your wrist, and you can get like really basic medical ones, or you can get like really pretty ones that have got beads on them and stuff like that. And
Oh, I remember back in the day, there was something called like a sticker not wearing on your wrist, but rather like behind your ear.
okay, yeah.
And some people say that help. It didn't help me. I think I'm kind of like the very bad case. But yeah, I think it's also some pressure point as well that people said.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure now people still using it. And I don't really understand the mechanism. Yeah,
Yeah.
if it
So I
helps.
mean, I haven't looked into the research or the data or information to know if these things are just have a placebo effect or whether they actually
Mhm.
do work. But Katie is, she swore by it, and I do remember when she was in the younger years, year 7 and 8, I do remember her getting really, really sick. And but she ended up taking GCC geography, so of course she was going to go on more field trips, and I was a bit nervous from her, but she was fine, and she said that she swears it was those bands that she was wearing. So fair dues, and I doubt Katie you're listening, but hi Katie, hope you're doing all right. You must be in your mid-20s by now. Oh, God, I feel old. But of course the other part of Spill the Beans, Lynn, is that you kind of like geography and kind of this kind of science, climate science, energy science wasn't always your background, was it? I mean, was it medicine that you used to do, or you used to be not specialize in, but they used to focus in?
Yeah, so I actually did my bachelor's in dentistry.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, in Vietnam it's called like it's a doctor degree, so it's some medicine background. It's not totally in dentistry in here, but it's rather focused on not only the teeth but also like the jaw and then this like facial area.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Yeah.
anyway, like for short, you can call that dentistry.
Oh, right. So what made you decide that that wasn't for you then, and you just wanted to change track? Was it because this was more appeal? What you're doing now is more appealing, or you just like, was there something about that you're like, actually no?
Yeah, it's more the second case actually. I did that for like 2 or 3 years, and I realized that this is not my thing. And it's not a career that I want for the long term. But still, I finished the degree so that I can get a bachelor's degree, so that I can move on to the master's degree without having to do the bachelor's again.
Okay.
But while during doing that bachelor's degree in dentistry, I already tried to discover what I really want to do, and I realized like I traveled quite a lot, and I really enjoy to see all kind of natural landscape and understand about the cloud or the wind,
Yeah.
which sounds very strange to my classmate, like talking about the wind with the dentist. But yeah, I didn't know a lot about the field back then, so that's I chose to do something in environmental science. But gradually, I learned more and more about the field, and then find the niche that I want to do. But
Yeah.
back then, it's quite a change. Yeah, and sometimes like I still remember like when I bought a book about jet stream, the jet stream from Tim Woolens.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so the first page I wrote down something like it's been a long journey, because like 5 years ago I didn't even know what a jet stream was, and now I'm reading that. So
Yeah.
it's a big change to me, but I'm happy that now I'm here, because like
Oh.
I feel that this is something that for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's never too late, anybody, to find your if you feel something's not quite right, it's never too late, to kind of change tack. You can definitely make a big jump, as Lynn's just said, from dentistry to kind of, more environmental sciencey kind of stuff. And the other thing is, geography does get you eventually, doesn't it, everybody? So,
Yeah.
so there's a good story in that. Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Right, Lynn. So coming up to the grand finale, if you like, of our chat is we are all geographers. So for folks, regular listeners, you know what this is all about. For those listening to us at the first time, and Lynn is your what a wonderful first guest to listen to if this is your first time. But we are all geographers is where we connect all of our guests together by coming up with a word where the guest can link however they so wish. It's not a challenge. It's not. There's no right or wrong answer, as we say as teachers. It's simply how the person would like to make a connection with it. So last week you heard from Louis Viss, geography teacher with French background, lived in Belgium with Dutch grandparents, crikey. And he was challenged by Helen Illes from Estonia with the word openness. I did a great job with the word openness. But Louis has given you a really great word, I think, for you because of all the traveling that you've done and your strong sense of self. And Louis has given you the word identity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's quite a nice one, quite a good one. So what Lynn's got to do, everybody, is that Lynn's got just 30 seconds to just talk about the word identity and how it links to geography in the loosest sense. So it could link to, Lynn's sense of place or how she thinks about herself, whatever it is. So you ready for that then, Lynn? Do you think you can talk about identity for 30 seconds?
Yes, I think it's an important part of me. So
Okay, so when you're ready, just make a start, and I'll tell you when your 30 seconds are up. So over to you.
okay, so identity is something that you develop over time. I think I'm I'm not trying to like discover my identity, but I think I deliberately trying to build the identity that I want, and it's really helped me to navigate, especially when I go to different countries and question about which part of me is me and which part of me is actually adapted from somewhere else. But eventually, all of that is what built your identity. And I think it's also important to know that you can use your identity as your um, tool to deal with the surrounding area, your surroundings. Like like I am defined that Vietnamese, so that I know that my history and yeah, I just think like identity can change, and it's you can make that decision. So don't let it be something that fixed to you
Yeah,
and you have to follow it.
I totally
And
agree with
yeah,
you
that's
there.
what I want
Yeah,
to say.
we went over 30 seconds there, but that's absolutely fine because I've very rarely stuck to 30 seconds. People want to get it over and done with, but when you come up with something, that just we want to listen to, that was a nice little. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, yeah, all about identity, not being fixed, not being bound by it, but allowing it to nurture and change. Yeah, that was a nice one. Thank you, Lynn. Um, so our next guest is, what would you like to give them? What word would you like to offer our next guest, and what they can interpret?
Um, I thought about that, but like I didn't have a word back then. But now looking out of the window, and it's a very nice sunny day. After like a storm from the polar vortex just a
Yes.
few days
Yeah.
ago with all the hailstones.
Yep.
Um, so I think they maybe this just one word like hay, like hay market or hay fever or like
Okay.
make
Hey,
um
Hay, not Hey. Yep.
yeah Ay
Okay.
yeah, it's just have this warm feeling when I think about that, when you see the sunshine, and it would be a nice day. So
Although when thinking about hay and things like
mhm.
that, when the sun comes out for me at that time of year, it makes me sneeze because of my hay
I'm
fever.
sorry for people who have
Ah,
hay
that's fine.
fever.
It's funny. But it's really interesting how my nose has started tingling just at the mention of it. But I like
Mm,
that word. That's really, really good. And yeah, and of course the storms. So for people listening to this, perhaps months after this is released, where the storms you're referring to, of course, was like Storm Eunice and Storm Franklin. I think it was Franklin. I think that they called it, which of course moved across Europe because that really, really intense jet
mm,
stream and that pressure gradient and as you said, the polar vortex. So we can start talking all that gobbledygook, can't we? Right. Okay. So our next guest, the word for you is hey. Right, Lynn. Is there anybody you'd like to say hello to? Any shout outs? Anybody you want to say
Yeah, I want to shout out to people that I worked with in Wembley back in Norwich. It was a
Yep.
very nice time for me, and also all of the wonderful people that I would love to have more connect with.
Yeah.
Like except for the pandemic, I couldn't travel around. Otherwise, it would be very lovely to talk to them again. So
Yeah.
Umberto, Lauren, Luke, and you, of course.
Yeah, it'd be good to catch up with all those folks, wasn't it? And I know you're not active on social media, but you do have a Twitter account which you use to kind of monitor what else is going on. But in case people do want to give you a follow and want to kind of connect with what with you, so what is your Twitter handle?
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe later on I can have something, especially when my first paper published. Uh, but at the moment there's not much going on there. But my Twitter account is Linh Ho. So I spell
Linho Chan,
W.
yes, that's LINHHOTRAN.
Yes.
Yep, wonderful. Well, great. Well, Lynn, I've really, really enjoyed catching up with you. It's been too long. Yeah, and it's just been absolutely amazing just to listen to how you've gone on from being that fresh-faced intern at Wembley and like being a part of something which I strongly believe is crucial to our mitigation and adaptation methods, mitigation and adaptation efforts to climate change, and I think work that you're doing is absolutely crucial, and yeah, so thank you for all you're doing, and I'm really, really excited to see the work that comes out from all of your PhD and your thesis and everything, and good luck with it, and have a lovely time in Vietnam with your family next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and it's been a very much pleasure to talking to you.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.